Welcome everyone to another edition of the Buffalo Fatherhood Initiative podcast. Special one today because it's in conjunction with Breaking Barriers and our mental health wellness initiative. My brother Antoine Johnson is engaged in some conversation with some other men in the barbershop right now around mental health, in particular mental health around stress and depression pertaining to Black and brown men and boys. I'm joined with two special, phenomenal gentlemen. I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
What's up, y'all? Isaiah Gary, Health Sciences Charter School and Adversity Builds Character. Happy to be here today.
All right. And also on the podcast today, we have my brother Karl. Karl, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself to the people?
I'm Karl Shallahorn. I'm a federal program health advisor with the Mental Health Advocates of Western New York and SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration.
All right. And Isaiah, I know you're working with a lot of young men in our school systems, and just how do you kind of see yourself and your role in regards to just kind of helping young men with some of the stuff that they deal and struggle with?
Man, I see myself as a street preacher. You know, people asked me one time, we were on a field trip and the student said, well, Mr. Gary, why don't you just become a pastor? I said, man, I'm a street pastor. I look at it like, I deliver love. I give them what I call ghetto gospel. I'm from where I grew up over here in this area, but I'm from where our kids are from. So I relate to them in a different way, in our unique way. And I'm able to give them what I call ghetto gospel, which is love, time, attention, and bridging the gap between the old school, which I was raised by my grandmother. Well, she helped raise me, and I learned a lot from her. And understanding some of the challenges that they face. It's not that they don't have challenges, they have a different set of challenges. So kind of just bridging the gap and being the person that they need or the person I needed when I was growing up.
Okay. So, Karl, question for you, just based on some of what Isaiah just shared. Being a person that's in the mental health field, you're well aware of the stigmas, right? And I think we are as well. But you're also aware of the lack of, especially male in that field, right? And I know earlier we talked and you kind of threw some stats out there around what that actually looks like. So can you kind of talk more about that and maybe some of the things that we can do to make entering into a mental health profession attractive to men? Because we know we just need more men in the arena.
Well, so much of this is historical. A lot of what we talked about this a lot last week here when we were here about the historical implications of mental health in the Black community, the trauma that comes from it. And when you talk about getting people who are providers, as we say, people who are professionals, for one, there hasn't been ample opportunity. One of the things we talk about is equity. Right? Equity in education. If you're not providing people opportunities for learning when they're young, how are they going to rise into these professions when they're older? So it's sort of like we need to provide, we talk about the school to prison pipeline. We did the school to college pipeline, right? And with a focus on letting young men know that this is the kind of thing you can do that is you can make a living. Now, of course, people oftentimes get caught up in like, oh, you don't make much money in doing this kind of thing. Well, I beg to differ. If you are a private clinician, you can do all right. Now, mind you, it's all relative. But what I'm saying is that if you do the work, if you apply yourself and get established, you can make a living. And in fact, I know many people who do this now who start off working, say, in a clinical program, like a community-based provider. We have Horizon, we got Best Self, Endeavor, all of them, Spectrum. They'll start there, then they'll go in their own private practice. Okay, so but historically though, those opportunities haven't been there. Now I know there are some programs. There's a local foundation called the Patrick P. Lee Foundation, which provides scholarships for people going into professions. And my nephew. Actually became a psychiatrist through this program. He just started as a full-time psychiatrist this year. Went through the full program at UB and everything. And so there's opportunities out there, but it's like, it takes guidance. So we need like mentoring. We need people like, mentoring programs. We need people to step up and provide the guidance for young people to know, hey, this is something that you can do. Because so often because of the stigma, for one thing, but also not even knowing what it is. What is a counselor? What do they do? Oh, they just talk. Like just so you got to break it down so it's understandable what it actually is about.
Well, really, a lot of times it's not so much talking. Like counselors really there to kind of start to ask you the right questions.
Yeah, well, that's the misconception, right? That's the misconception. It's just we just talk, but the reality is that it takes a lot of training to be a good therapist. To the point, I want to get to what you're saying about having a professional of color working with you. My therapist is white. And my story is I grew up in the suburbs all my life, and so my background is a little bit different. So when it comes to culturally, it's not as much of the thing. But it's interesting though, like I'll put it this way, I got a car, right? I want to take my car to the best mechanic I can. So I don't care what color they are. If they're good, they're good. That's reality. And I mean, so there are good mechanics, there are bad mechanics, there's good counselors, not so good counselors. And I think what you want to do is, but the point is that you want to find someone who you're comfortable with. Like you said, someone who you feel you can open up to. My therapist now is someone who I had to get comfortable with, but I knew enough about it that I had to just go in and just dump. I just did a dump and to get all out there. And it was really kind of uncomfortable at first, but now it's like, okay, it's out there. So I think for me, it's about finding that person who they call a fit, right? They call it a good fit. And so it's like a good pair of shoes, right? You put on your shoes, you fit well, and it ain't hurting your feet. It's like with a counselor. You want to find someone who you can talk to, who you can be open with, and you're just able to have that conversation.
Yeah, for the young people out there, we talking about not your clothes fit. We talking about fit and the combinations of personalities and people,
right,
and folk that can help you, right? Because we know that's the lingo. You got to make sure you're fit right?
Facts.
All right. I want to switch gears a little bit because today we've kind of centered the conversation that the gentlemen are having over there around stress and depression, right? And Karl, I kind of opened up the circle today and just kind of like, yo, this is what I'm feeling right now. Like I feel stressed right now, and at times a little bit overwhelmed. And I was sharing with you that I haven't really been working out the way that I like to work out, that I'm accustomed to. Basketball has always been my safe haven, a place that I would go to and just whatever's going on in the world for those couple hours that I'm on the basketball court, nothing matters. I'm dating Spartan for those 2 to 3 hours and I'm good, right? But haven't been wanting to go do that. I'm a creature of habit. I tend to have a very set routine schedule. This is when I'm running my errands. This is when I'm locked in with work. This is when I'm really locked in having that quality time with my daughter. And I just feel like right now, just everything is just off, right? And I've been trying to figure out, is it work? Is it that I put too much on my plate right now? Is it the bartender stuff I do on the side? Is it some of the stuff that you wind up carrying when you're just working with young men? Is it just this time of year because it's cold and it tends to get gloomy? And I had to, I was asking myself, I kind of threw it out there to you, like, am I depressed right now? Is it like a slight bit of actual depression in there? Or is it really just, Daniel, man, you just stressed. Like you got the weight of the world on your shoulders and you got to get back to doing some of the things that you would normally do to offset that.
One thing I would say is that I didn't say this before, but this is all a spectrum, right? Mental health is on a spectrum. You could be mild, moderate, severe. You could have mild depression, right? You could have mild symptoms. You got a cold, I got a bit of a sniffle. I got a flu, that's more severe, right? So the same thing with mental health. You got to think of it that way. So if you're experiencing, so like you said, you don't feel like playing ball, you don't feel like doing your groceries, you don't feel like, doing those things you typically would, that might be a sign, one criteria symptom. You might feel a little bit sad or down, right? Or depressed, like we use that word depressed a lot. You may low energy, right? I mean, low energy is a big one for people, right? You just don't feel like doing what you would normally do. You don't feel like
Sleeping
working out.
Pattern off.
Yeah. But see, that's not abnormal, even though I don't like the word normal. But it's typical for people to go through that from time to time. We all go through that. The thing to concern yourself with is if it goes on longer than a few weeks and doesn't let up, right? It's not getting better on its own. Now, there's some things you can do on your own for it to get better. You can reach out. You can talk to somebody. You can, even if it's a friend or clergy or a teacher or whoever, right? Someone at work. You can talk to somebody just to kind of get things off your chest. sometimes you got to just push yourself a little bit, right? To do those things. Then you kind of find yourself getting out of that rut. But if it stays and it keeps going on, and then you don't find any relief, then maybe it is time to seek some help, whether it be going to your doctor first, your primary care doctor first, or even going to the next level of seeing a professional help. And there's other resources as well, how to find that help if you need it. But the bottom line is nobody should have to suffer, right? If you find yourself struggling for long enough time, we know that these things typically don't get better on their own if they are truly what they are, as you're describing. Now, are you depressed or not? That's for you to determine. But if you keep feeling it, then it might be an indication that you might be dealing with something. But don't go to that place of, oh my God, what do I do? Am I down for the count? I wouldn't say so. Recovery is possible from anything. You can get better, but it might take some work to do that.
Gotcha. So Isaiah, but when you feel stressed, and just because you got a lot going on too, right? Super active in community and positive, brother. But oftentimes you'll take on some of the stuff that students or family and just the world around you is just dealing with, right? So what are some of the things that you do to kind of combat some of the pressure and just stress of life? But then it's hard just being a black man, right? So can you talk a little bit about, what you do?
Facts. So vicarious trauma is a real thing, and I'm an empathetic person. So when a kid comes to me and they're sharing their story, I'm literally feeling it. It's been times where I cried with them because I'm feeling what they're saying, and I had to become aware of that and start to set certain boundaries. Boundaries is a big thing. Being aware of what I'm feeling, what other people are feeling, emotional intelligence, and being able to check in with myself and say, wait a minute, it's too much. When I'm taking on too much, learning that no is a complete sentence. Having my no means something so people respect my yes. Because a lot of times I found that people didn't respect my yes as much because I didn't have a solid no. So now saying no and setting boundaries, I can't take that on right now. It's big for me. Outside of that, lemon lavender candles. Some people might laugh at that.
Oh man, I love a good candle, bro.
Yo, Yankee candles, lemon lavender candle is relaxing for me. Just sleeping sometimes, just being able to sleep and not even sleep. Like my grandma would say, it's one thing to sleep, it's another thing to rest. Being able to rest uninterrupted, spending time with family, going to lunch with my sister helped me out. Last week I was going through a little thing. Spending time with my kids, going to the gym with them. Like you said, playing basketball. I went bowling. I love bowling, and I hadn't been in a long time. So just going bowling and getting back to things that I enjoy doing, and then just taking time to myself sometimes when I feel myself. That time, that transition from work to going in the house, sitting in the car for 30 minutes, just listening to music or just being with myself, I've been talking to different men about meditating. I want to get into meditating and yoga, but prayer, even if I can't make church, sometimes I watch online, just praying, man, meditating and just being around positive energy and positive people. I would say those are a lot of the things I do to help myself when I'm feeling stressed.
Let me just jump on that for a second. Being around positive people is huge. There's a saying that says we're a product of the company we keep, right? If you're around people who are, we use that term toxic, who are negative, who are always, hating on you or just putting people down or just negative people, that will suck the life out of you and take you down. So my thing is like, I like to surround myself with people who are positive, who think in a way that I like to think. And mind you, we lean on each other. I'm not saying that everybody's doing great all the time, but what I'm saying though is that if you're struggling and you got somebody who's strong and supportive, you go to them, right? And I'll tell you, the way these are these days, we need all the help we can get to get through just the day. So sometimes, having positive people in your life makes a huge difference. So, and I find myself to be very fortunate that I've got people in my 12-step program who I can call or who I can be with, and also others in my family who are just there for me when I need it. I got my cousin Carolyn is like a sister to me. And she's like 10 years older, so she's wiser, she's older, and she's my go-to when I need support. I also have a mentor. I still have a mentor. This guy, I've known him since I've been 4 years old. His wife used to be my babysitter. That's how long I've known him. And he's wise beyond his years. And I go to him, I ask him questions still, and I'm up there, right? But I still have somebody I can go to if I need it.
So Karl, I know we're having a conversation around stress, right? And a lot of times we look at stress as just a bad thing. Can you kind of talk about the difference between kind of the good stress, the bad stress, and then kind of that middle ground that you really just to kind of keep you well balanced?
So there's good stress and bad stress. Eustress is good stress. It's spelled EUSTRESS. Bad stress is like distress. Eustress, distress, right? So think about eustress. I would say Josh Allen, but I don't know about that. I don't know if I can use that terminology now. Patrick Mahomes, good stress. He gets ready to go on the field, or any pro athlete. I'll just say any pro athlete. When they get ready to go on the field, they got some good stress going on. They got the adrenaline pumping. They're focused. They're ready to go, right? LeBron, okay, you could tell about the greats. They got good stress. Distress or bad stress is when you feel like you said, the weight of the world. You feel like you can't handle things. You're overwhelmed. Like things are falling apart. And sometimes when we're going under this distress, we have symptoms that come up. Sometimes depression and anxiety can happen. Or we might find ourselves, some people will resort to using drugs and alcohol to cope with the stress. That's very common. The eustress is a good thing because that's how we get up and get going every day. I mean, if you just get up out of bed, that's a form of eustress, right? That's a form of good, positive stress. But the balance is finding that fine line between the good and the bad and trying to keep it focused so that you can manage whatever comes your way. Even too much good stress can be a bad thing in the long run, because what's happening is when you're under stress, your body releases cortisol. It's a hormone in our body, in our brain, that's released, and over time it can affect us physically and mentally, emotionally. It could cause heart attacks and cause cancer, diabetes. So cortisol is a harmful hormone in our body released by stress. So you want to try to do whatever you can to reduce the stress. Isaiah's talking about meditation, yoga, prayer, exercise, like you're talking about. Those are things that you can decrease the stress, and when you do that, you're basically decreasing the cortisol that's being released in your body.
You mentioned alcohol as a coping mechanism, right? And we're in this time of year, and I'm thinking about some of my friends right now that have lost family members within, the recent years, and I see how it impacts and affects them, right? And I know people that this time of the year tends to be very difficult for them, and they will turn to alcohol as kind of a coping mechanism. Can you talk about some of the, the dangers of kind of utilizing alcohol as a coping mechanism, and some other, maybe suggest some other things that folk that struggle around this time of year? So you got holidays, and then you have loss of family, and people that you're used to seeing aren't around. You talk about, some ways that, or recommend some things that people can do to kind of just get through the holiday season, because it's not always, happy holidays for everyone around this time of year. And we're in Buffalo. So.
Yeah, right. Well, for one thing, alcohol has a lot of negative qualities that affect the body, right? And so there's a physical context of what we talk about with alcohol, how it could affect us. It dulls the senses. It makes us react slower. We hear about these driving, accidents, people under the influence, things like that.
Slow reaction time.
But also, when you talk about how people act and behave when they're under the influence, they hear about people being like an angry drunk, right? Or a happy drunk. Either way, it'll affect the way a person behaves. So when you think about it, alcohol is a mood changer, right? It'll change your mood. And also it affects other ways where you might say some people it'll affect their work. Like they can't work they typically would, or they're hungover, or they just can't make it to social occasions because they're too preoccupied with wanting to drink. There's nothing wrong with having a social drink. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not a good thing to do or a bad thing to do. But sometimes too much is too much. Right. And, you see on TV these commercials say, drink responsibly. Well, that's important, right? To drink responsibly. What does that mean? For a typical man, they say 2 to 3 drinks.
2 to 3, yep.
in a given setting, right?
And within a certain time frame.
It's a certain time frame, right? Not in 20 minutes.
Yeah, not back to back to back.
Like we're talking over a few hours,
I
right?
know some of those people.
Maybe a woman, one or two, depending on the size of the person, because it all affects how big you are, because that's how it correlates. But as far as things you can do that are positive, sometimes, like I said, I can't stress enough how the importance of having a support system around you to buffer the stress that you're going through, right? One of the benefits, and I'll just give a plug for my 12-step program, is that, when I find myself around people who I can talk to and be honest with, it can really help to elevate my mood and make me feel like I'm not alone. Because sometimes people feel like they're all alone fighting what they're going through. And then they resort to using substances, not just alcohol, other things too, to get through. The bottom line is, chances are there's somebody out there going through what you're going through. But we just feel like we're the only ones. So finding a positive support system is one thing. Being able to find an activity that you enjoy, like we were talking about before. Sometimes a hobby, like something that you might be able to throw yourself in to distract yourself. There's healthy distractions, right, that you can do. Things like, whether it be sports or meditation, exercise, all those things you could do, or it might be an activity like a funny TV show, right? A comedy movie, whatever, a drama, thriller, whatever, just binge on some Netflix, right? Whatever. But the point is that there's things you can do that are alternatives that aren't going to be harmful to your body or your mind.
Appreciate that, Karl. I know it's about time for us to wrap up. I know you guys are anxious to get back into the conversation over there. I want to give some last words to you guys before we close out.
Do the work. It's work. It's not easy. Dealing with your mental health is a journey, and it doesn't happen overnight. It is work. You do have to face some things that maybe you shied away from, some things you never talked about, you never told anyone, things that you suppressed and had buried, and you don't want to let come to the surface. Do the work. It's scary at first. I encourage everyone to deal with your stuff. It's okay to have issues. It's okay to have trauma. What's not okay is to walk around bleeding out on everybody else and to expect everybody else to be okay with your stuff and to show up and say, well, this is just how I am. Because it doesn't have to be. It's another side to life. And I just encourage everyone to begin their healing journey wherever they need to begin it and to do what they need to do to be okay.
Word. That's what's up.
And I would just add, you're worth it, right? We all go through things, and it's okay to ask for help. That's the biggest misconception, is that ask for help is weakness, and it's not. Sometimes in my life when I've asked for help, I've gotten it, and it's been literally been a lifesaver. So if you find yourself and you feel like you can't go on any longer, or you feel like you're struggling, don't forget, I got to just give a shout out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 988. And that's if you're really in a critical state, 988. You call that number, you can talk to somebody who can help you. We got a lot of resources here in Buffalo, a lot of places that can help. Another shout out to the Mental Health Advocates West New York, 886-1242. Give them a call, they'll help you out.
All right, y'all heard Isaiah. Isaiah said, do the work, stop bleeding out on other folk, they don't deserve it. Karl said, gave you some information on people that you can call, and gave you some tips on what you can do if you're feeling kind of just blah. But with that, we'll be back here same time, same bat channel next week. Buffalo Fatherhood Initiative podcast, talking about mental health with men in the community. Peace and love, y'all.